March 18, 1945. Outside a shattered rail station near Koblenz, Germany, snowmelt dripped through blackened rafters while a ring of American infantrymen stared at one silent prisoner and the watch on his wrist. It was Daniel Mercer's watch. Silver case. Cracked face. Brown leather strap dark with mud. Inside the lid were two scratched words every man in Baker Company knew, to Danny. Corporal Jesse Nolan had seen it 100 times on Mercer's arm while the young private counted shells, borrowed matches, and joked that his wife in Ohio had given him the only civilized thing left in Europe. Mercer had vanished 3 days earlier during a fog-bound fight near the Moselle. Now a German soldier had surrendered wearing it. Nobody spoke. The prisoner stood with his hands raised, lips pale, field-gray tunic ripped at the shoulder. Behind him, a cattle car still smoked from the night's shelling. The smell rolling out of it was wood, coal, blood, and something worse. Sergeant Ray Donnelly stepped forward and seized the prisoner's wrist. "Where did you get this?" The German blinked. "Bit? Don't do that." Donnelly shoved the watch toward his face. "This belonged to an American." The prisoner swallowed. "Americaner." "Yes." That was enough. Private Lou Baines spat in the mud. He took it off Mercer. After he killed him. Put him against the wall. A frightened civilian woman stood in a station doorway with 2 children clinging to her coat, watching the Americans decide whether this man would live another minute. Lieutenant Arthur Kell forced his men back with an open palm. His own voice sounded thin. He had lost Mercer too. Last sighting, Orchard Road, machine gun fire, night fog, men scattering. No body. No tags. No answers. Only the watch. Kell turned to the company interpreter, technician Emil Verhoeven. "Ask him again." Slowly. Verhoeven did. The prisoner's name was Otto Weiss. "No unit," he said. "No rifle. No officer. Just surrender." Then came the part nobody believed. "He says," Verhoeven translated, "the American was already dying. He gave him the watch." Baines let out one hard laugh. "Sure he did." But Kell was no longer looking at Weiss. He was staring at the half-open cattle car. A medic, Carl Hensley, climbed inside. Then froze. "Lieutenant." The men heard something in that single word and went still. Inside were 2 dead Americans and a third man barely breathing, wrists torn raw by rope, chest wrapped in a bloody field dressing that was not American issue. When Hensley cut away the gag, the survivor coughed, drank water, and stared straight at the prisoner. "That one," he whispered. "Don't shoot him." Everything stopped. For a moment the station sounded enormous. Water dripped through the rafters. A horse somewhere beyond the tracks screamed after being hit by shrapnel hours earlier and still not dying. Nolan felt his thumb brush the safety on his rifle and hated himself for how ready he had been. The prisoner did not plead. He only stood there breathing through his nose, eyes fixed on the wounded American as if that voice, not the rifle's, now held his fate. Even Baines lowered his rifle. The wounded man was Private Neil Rutter of the 10th Armored. Kell knelt beside him. "You know him?" Rutter nodded weakly. "He pulled us out after the guards ran." The woman in the doorway began crying without sound. Word spread up the chain by noon. Captured German. Missing Americans. Dead men in a rail car. An enemy wearing an American watch. A survivor saying that same enemy had saved them. At battalion headquarters, Major Ellis Brandt listened with both fists on the table while mud dried on every boot in the room. "So we have a Wehrmacht private claiming a dead American gave him personal property?" "Yes, sir." "And the only witness is half dead?" "Yes, sir." Brandt looked at Weiss. The prisoner was exhausted, cut over one eyebrow, hands shaking from cold and hunger. Yet he had not asked for mercy once. "Search him." They found half. A crust of bread, a family photograph, 3 loose rifle cartridges, and an American dog tag bent by shrapnel. Daniel Mercer. The room changed. Donnelly's jaw locked. Baines swore. Kell shut his eyes for 1 second and opened them harder. Where did he get that? Verhoeven asked. Weiss answered immediately. From the dead man. This time even Rudder turned his face away. Brandt made the only call he trusted. Send it upward. Nobody lays a hand on him until command answers. The wait lasted 6 hours, and the waiting made it worse. By late afternoon, men coming off patrol slowed outside headquarters just to stare at the window. Nobody said Mercer's name loudly anymore. They said it like a prayer and an accusation at the same time. In the aid station, Rudder drifted in and out, waking only to ask whether Weiss was still alive. Each time Hensley answered yes, the wounded private nodded once and slipped back under. Rumors multiplied in the station yard like sparks in dry grass. Mercer had been stripped alive. Mercer had been executed. Mercer had begged for help. Mercer had been left in the car while this German stole his time. Every version ended with the same image, Danny Mercer dead and a German wearing his watch. Near dusk, engines rolled into the yard. Officers straightened before the lead jeep stopped. The polished helmet, the ivory-handled pistols, the impatient stillness around him made men step aside before General George S. Patton even spoke. The room went silent when he entered. Patton looked at the map, the officers, the stretcher, the prisoner. Then his eyes dropped to the watch. It took him less than 3 seconds. What's that doing on his wrist? No one rushed to answer. Everyone waited. Major Brandt gave the report without drama. Patton listened without interrupting. Names. Times. Shelling. Number of prisoners. Number of guards. Sequence. Witness condition. Missing body. Then he stepped toward Weiss until the prisoner had to lift his chin. Patton paused. Ask him, he said, why a German soldier would wear a dead American's watch into an American camp unless he wanted to be shot. Verhoeven translated. Weiss answered softly. He says leaving it behind would make him a thief. Wearing it made him a witness. No one moved. Patton's face did not change. Continue. The story came out in pieces. 2 nights earlier, Weiss had been assigned to move German wounded and 3 captured Americans by rail. Before the train could leave, American artillery hit the yard. 2 guards fled. 1 died under falling masonry. Weiss crawled through the wreckage and found Mercer bleeding badly, Rudder half-conscious, and another American trapped under splintered boards. Mercer told him not to leave the wounded men inside the car. So he helped them? Brandt asked. Weiss nodded. He cut ropes. Dragged 1 man clear. Used his own dressing for bandages. Searched bodies for water. Tried to carry Mercer, but Mercer refused until the others were moved first. 1 American died before sunrise. Another near noon. Mercer lasted longest. Rudder began to cry on the stretcher. He did, he whispered. Danny made him swear. Patton turned his head. Swear what? Rudder swallowed. That he'd take the watch. Danny said if we all died, somebody had to walk into an American line with proof he didn't leave us there like animals. The stove clicked. Outside, a truck backfired. Inside, nobody breathed normally. When ordered, Weiss reached into his tunic and produced a folded scrap of paper. Verhoeven opened it. In shaky pencil were 4 words and an address in Columbus, Ohio. Tell Helen I tried. Patton took the note. He read it once. Then again. Did Mercer say anything else? Rudder shut his eyes. He asked for the time. Patton glanced at the cracked watch face. He couldn't read it. The shell had broken the glass, Rutter said. The German told him dawn was coming anyway. Patton looked at Weiss for a long moment. Nobody could tell if the general was angry, impressed, or simply measuring the entire room. Finally he spoke. This war has produced enough butchery. I will not add stupidity. The soldiers said nothing. Return the watch to Mercer's effects. Record the witness statement. Mark this prisoner protected. Feed him. Treat him. Guard him properly. Baines stared at the floor. Patton was not finished. A dying American trusted him with his last piece of home, he said, holding up the note. That does not make him our friend. But it does make him a man who obeyed the better order when armed men around him did not. No one challenged him. That night Mercer's body was found beside the freight wall under cinders and thawing snow. He had been laid on his back, hands folded over his stomach. Someone had put a splinter of wood beneath his head like a pillow. In his pocket medics found a German ration biscuit broken neatly in half. The civilian woman later gave a statement. Through Verhoeven, she said Weiss had shouted at other Germans to stop beating the Americans. She said he carried water in a coal bucket. She said when Mercer died, Weiss removed his cap and stood there in the smoke. Weeks later, after the Rhine crossing drove the war toward collapse, Sergeant Donnelly wrote to Helen Mercer himself. He enclosed the repaired watch and the penciled note. He wrote about Danny's courage, about Neil Rutter living because her husband refused to think only of himself, and about the German prisoner he had nearly shot before knowing the truth. He wrote that war made uniforms easy to hate and souls harder to judge. Baker Company never forgot the sight of Mercer's watch on the wrong wrist. They forgot even less what followed. Because the ugliest moments in war do not always begin with gunfire. Sometimes they begin with certainty. With grief demanding a target. With armed men convincing themselves that justice is simple because pain is simple. But pain is not simple. Neither is mercy. Years later, Rutter still remembered Patton standing in that hot little room with mud on the floorboards and dead men waiting outside. He remembered how power sounded when it did not need to shout. He remembered a general choosing truth over rage while everyone else was still listening to the easier story. In war, men destroy bridges, towns, columns, and each other. Yet sometimes the choice that matters most is smaller than all of that. A watch kept on a wrist so the truth would not die alone. What would you have done? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want more World War II stories where humanity, war, and difficult decisions collided, make sure to subscribe.